Hello fellow health-seeking humans! My earrings are now up on my Etsy store and the link will be in the video description box down below. And if you don't like me hawking my jewelry on my edutainment health channel, there's the door. No, seriously, there's the actual freaking door! As you can see, they are asymmetrical, casual yet classy and chic. A few months ago, I said I would do a video on hydrogen sulfide SIBO treatment, and I'm finally doing it. Watch it be my luck that as soon as I go through all the research, compile it, synthesize it, write the script, edit the video, and then Dr. Pimentel's gonna come out with his newest study on hydrogen sulfide SIBO. That would be just my luck, wouldn't it? I already made a video on how I successfully treated my hydrogen sulfide SIBO and took my result from the test, which was a 10, down to underneath the cutoff of 5. So if you need a refresher or you haven't watched that video yet, I suggest you pause this video, go watch that video, and then come back here. So a little over a month ago, Dr. Pimentel went on Dr. Ruscio's podcast and talked about some new things in the hydrogen sulfide SIBO world, but he can't comment on too many things or else Dr. Pimentel can't publish. In my previous video, I made a Bartonella Babe bet that their current study comparing rifaximin and placebo to rifaximin and NAC would be the new hydrogen sulfide treatment that they are alluding to. And that is how I successfully treated myself. So in that podcast, he says, quote, "We are doing a clinical trial with a new formulation or new style of giving rifaximin, specifically looking at its effect on H2S. That's all I can say about the study right now, but it's for the diarrhea patient, which is what H2S is. So we're doing the Trio Smart Breath test for the study. We're randomizing people, everyone gets rifaximin, but some people get the new special cocktail. Then we'll see what gets better in what group." So he can't comment it, but I can blow it up if I want to because I'm not publishing it. So we'll just have to wait and see, but it looks like my hypothesis might be correct. And NAC is a sulfuric compound, but not all people with hydrogen sulfide SIBO have sensitivity to sulfur, and not all of them have diarrhea. Before we dive into treatment options, I need to make a very important point that I don't think has fully sunk into the SIBO community yet. And that is that the microbiome of the small intestine and the colon are significantly different, as is the bacterial load. Dr. Pimentel and his team's research has shown that you can't use stool to gauge what's going on in the small intestine. Testing stool shows you what's going on in the stool, but that's it. If you don't believe me, I will put a link in the video description box down below to the article that proves this, and I'll put the timestamp of the webinar in which he states this, and I'll put that in the video description box as well. We know that Vibrio accounts for 66% of all sulfate-reducing bacteria in the colon, and bulbus accounts for 16%. Try to say bulbus without laughing. There are a lot of sulfate-reducing bacterial genera, which is the, oh my god, our mouth moves. Look at our little mouth moving. Genera. How weird is that? Genera. So genera is the plural of genus, and in the order of taxonomical rank, you have species at the very bottom, and then genus is above that. So there are a lot of sulfate-reducing genera that start with disulfo, like Disulfococcus.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, like Streptococcus and Disulfobacter, etc. But these aren't the only genera that create hydrogen sulfide gas, and they're found in the colon. Dr. Pimentel, as far as I'm aware, has not come out straight and been like, these are the microbes, XYZ microbes are the ones that cause hydrogen sulfide SIBO. And Dr. Alison Stiebecker hypothesizes that the microbes that cause hydrogen sulfide SIBO are not necessarily the ones that get the most notoriety in creating hydrogen sulfide gas, like Vibrio. Instead, she has hypothesized in the past that the microbes that cause hydrogen sulfide SIBO will mainly be things like E. coli and Klebsiella. So Escherichia coli, better known as E. coli, can degrade sulfur-containing amino acids, including cysteine and methionine, and then create hydrogen sulfide. And the byproducts that are produced can be used by more well-known sulfate-reducing bacteria to then create even more hydrogen sulfide. Additionally, there are sulfite-reducing bacteria that create hydrogen sulfide, and that includes Klebsiella. And by this time, you're probably like, when is she going to get to the treatment part? Patience is a virtue, my friend. Most, if not all, microbes create hydrogen sulfide, and mammalian cells create hydrogen sulfide too in small quantities. Hydrogen sulfide actually, in the right quantities and the right context, can actually protect cells from oxidative stress. Scientists have shown when you knock out the ability of a microbe to produce hydrogen sulfide, they're actually more susceptible to antibiotics and being killed by the antibiotics due to oxidative stress and chromosomal damage. In other words, bacterial cells create hydrogen sulfide due to its antioxidant effect. So it was a little bit tricky to make this video because I like to read the scientific literature in order to make sure that the antibiotics actually kill the microbes that create hydrogen sulfide SIBO. But since we don't have literature and we don't know what the microbes are, then I can't do that. And that's why I spent all this time setting up all that background info in the beginning of this video. So most of our information on hydrogen sulfide comes from research on the colon and not on the small intestine, which is not ideal. So for this video, I will go based off that research and based off the clinical experience of SIBO experts because that's all we have. So let's start with bismuth. Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Yay, Pepto-Bismol! Ever wonder why Pepto-Bismol can turn your tongue and stool black? This is because the bismuth binds to sulfide to create bismuth sulfide, and that accounts for the black discoloration. In a webinar by Dr. Pimentel on March 17th, he says that he usually just has his patients get Pepto-Bismol instead of getting bismuth from a compounding pharmacy. Piper, 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 talking about Piper, Piper. And that was my exercise for the week. He doesn't say the dosage of the Pepto-Bismol, and he kind of just says yes when asked if the dosage is 3 swigs a day, so that's helpful. I'm not a doctor, so obviously ask your doctor, but I was prescribed 100 milligrams of bismuth twice a day, but I have anecdotally seen patients go up to 2,000 milligrams a day. And I want to emphasize that he says that this is what he's doing currently, but he's not wedded to this treatment because we're going to learn more in the coming months. So why bismuth for hydrogen sulfide SIBO? One study gave rats several different antibiotics to see if that would reduce the sulfate-reducing bacteria in the feces. Without delving too much into the specifics, the scientists found that none of the antibiotics, including metronidazole and ciprofloxacin, were particularly effective at reducing sulfate-reducing bacteria, nor were they effective at reducing hydrogen sulfide released by the feces. Also, bismuth on its own was not effective at reducing the sulfate-reducing bacteria, but it was effective at binding to the sulfide. However, when ciprofloxacin was used in tandem with bismuth, this did significantly reduce both the hydrogen sulfate-reducing bacteria and the hydrogen sulfide gas coming from the feces. These rats passed brown stool instead of black stool, which confirmed their measurements of the sulfide production. So the scientists concluded that the bismuth and the cipro worked synergistically with each other. Obviously, the study was done in the colon. They were measuring sulfate-reducing bacteria, which may or may not be the same offenders for hydrogen sulfide SIBO. Cipro has its toxicities, and it was done in rats. But we know for sure that bismuth binds hydrogen sulfide, which can provide patients with symptomatic relief, and it can work synergistically with some antibiotics. So obviously, Pepto-Bismol has some downsides. If you have mast cell activation syndrome, you could react to any of the inactive ingredients in Pepto-Bismol, and Pepto-Bismol has dyes, sweeteners, flavor, and other I mean, technically, if you have MCAS, you could react to the bismuth itself, but if you compound it, there are fewer things for you to react to. And the bismuth in Pepto-Bismol is I'm spitting. And the bismuth in Pepto-Bismol is bismuth salicylate, and some people are sensitive to salicylates. A compounding pharmacy can make the bismuth into subnitrate or subcitrate, and hopefully it will comfort the perfectionists out there to know that Dr. Pimentel says that it doesn't really matter what form and any of these may work. So now let's move on to prescription antibiotics other than Xifaxan. Dr. Preet Kangura, who is a naturopathic doctor and a gut expert, has used Augmentin in his hydrogen sulfide SIBO patients with success. And Dr. Pimentel has said on Dr. Ruscio's podcast that some of his colleagues have used Augmentin and bismuth with success, even though Dr. Pimentel himself had not tried that yet. So yeah.
Very polished.
Augmentin is also known as amoxiclav for short because it's a combination antibiotic of amoxicillin and clavulanic acid. Dr. Kangura has said that he usually prescribes this for about 5 days, although some practitioners may do a bit longer, just depending on the patient's situation. Dr. Kangura also prescribes Bactrim DS, which is also a combination antibiotic of trimethroprim and sulfamethoxazole, and the DS stands for double strength, which is what it sounds like. And Dr. Kangura has said that he prescribes this also for around 5 days. In his clinical experience, either of these antibiotics should work pretty quickly, and the patient should know within around 5 days if it's working. And he recently said on a podcast that some of the hydrogen sulfide producers are E. coli and Klebsiella, which aligns with what Dr. Seebecker has been hypothesizing. But he also mentioned Proteus species and Citrobacter species. In that podcast, he also says that stool cannot tell you what's going on in the small intestine, so good on you, Kangura. If you see an overgrowth of a certain bacteria in the stool, you cannot guarantee that that's also overgrowing in the small intestine. So all of the pharmaceutical antibiotics that I've mentioned, including Xifaxan, Bactrim, and Augmentin, are broad spectrum because we don't know exactly what we're killing, and unless you were getting a small bowel aspirate while under anesthesia, you wouldn't know, at least not for sure. And this is just a side note in my opinion as a patient outsider looking in, but it seems like a lot of the SIBO experts talk to each other, or at the very least, it seems like Dr. Seebecker and Dr. Jacoby speak to everyone, and I can't say that of all health communities. And this makes me feel more comfortable talking about treatment options that don't have a lot of science behind them yet, because at least the experts are talking to each other and learning from each other. So let's move on to herbal antibiotics that are used for SIBO, and these can be used in combination with each other, in combination with bismuth, and technically it could be used with prescription antibiotics at the same time, but I haven't really seen that. Many SIBO experts use oregano oil for hydrogen sulfide SIBO, including Dr. Seebecker, Dr. Jacoby, and Dr. Kangura. I did a lot of reading on oil of oregano in high-impact journals like Nature, and it seems to be a very promising substance. So once again, we don't know the microbes that cause hydrogen sulfide SIBO, but we do know that oil of oregano is a broad-spectrum antimicrobial, and it kills lots of pathogens, including E. coli. So perhaps the two most potent compounds that are found in oregano oil are carvacrol and thymol. Hi everyone, Editing Jake here, coming in to correct myself. I said thymol, but I should have pronounced it thymol because it's derived from the word thyme, like the herb. Okay, back to the video. One study looked at the sensitivity of various pathogens and various commensal bacteria, or bacteria part of the normal flora, their sensitivity to essential oils and their compounds. One thing that the study found was that E. coli was highly susceptible to oregano oil and its compounds, and Salmonella enterica was not. Interestingly, good bacteria were relatively less sensitive to oregano oil and its compounds, including these bacteria. However, some beneficial bacteria were highly susceptible to oregano oil. How the essential oil is processed is important because that can affect the active ingredients in it, and that's a whole other rabbit hole that we don't have time for. So I will say that Dr. Kangura and Dr. Seebecker both use the specific formulation called ADP oregano oil by Biotics Research. Some practitioners dose the supplement quite high. In a podcast from August 2019, Dr. Seebecker says, and I'm going to read this because it's complicated, she has patients take 5 ADP tablets a day, 3 times a day for 10 days, and then she has the patient drop down to 3 tablets 3 times a day for 20 days. Got it? The next herbal antimicrobial that is mentioned by SIBO experts, including Dr. Kangura and Dr. Seebecker, is ursi, which is a shrub that grows flowers and berries. Once again, I'm not certain of the bacteria, but according to Dr. Kangura, it kills hydrogen sulfide producing bacteria, and this herb is also used in the treatment of UTIs, and most UTIs are caused by E. coli. I'm gonna be really embarrassed if hydrogen sulfide is not caused by E. coli at all. Dr. Kangura says he uses a very potent tincture of 1:1 or 1:2 as opposed to 1:4 or 1:5, or else the patient would have to take a ton. And a ton is the medical term for a ton. He doses the more potent tincture at about 3.5 to 4 milliliters twice a day with food for about 2 weeks. Yes, I did change outfits because it's another day, because the filming was taking too long, and I'm suffering from a new symptom called postprandial fatigue. So some practitioners also use silver hydrosol, and the most well-known toxicity with silver is something called argyria, and that's where your skin, nail beds, your gums, your internal organs, and your eyes can turn a bluish gray color, and this discoloration is permanent. You need to ingest a lot of silver for this to happen, and some types of silver are more likely to cause this than other types. So that's the well-known toxicity, but I wanted to know more about its safety, and I kid you not, I spent 10 hours reading about the safety of silver. That doesn't include all the other research I did for this video. For every positive article I could find about silver, I could find a negative article, and it was driving me bonkers. So in sum, the safety of silver depends on a lot of factors. The size of the particles of the silver, what the silver is coated with, the dose and frequency and the cumulative dose over the course of one's life, and the route of administration. Information on the surface coating of the silver is not always easily available to consumers, and this is important because this affects the toxicity on genes. Silver nanoparticles are increasingly being used in things like detergents and cleaners, lotions, fabrics, wound dressings, toothbrushes and toothpaste, deodorants, cutlery, washing machines and refrigerators, and other household products. And scientists have argued that this increased use can have a negative impact in our environment. It can infect microbes in our environment and other living things, including humans. One study found that silver can disturb the microbiome of rats, while another study found that it doesn't do anything to the microbiome of rats. One study found that an extremely high dose of silver in rats, that is 2,000 times the oral daily reference range set by the EPA, had no adverse effect on mice, but these mice were only given this dose for 3 days. But another study in mice showed that silver can cause irreversible chromosomal damage in the bone marrow, which could cause cancer. One study in humans did show that 14 days of oral silver didn't induce any observable markers of toxicity, but the scientists say that further studies are warranted. In vitro, silver has been shown to be antibacterial against gram-positive bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus, and gram-negative bacteria like E. coli, and fungus like Candida. I can already see right now someone typing a comment saying, "I've taken a fair amount of silver and it's safe." Unfortunately, that's not how science works. But I think we can make the argument that in medicine, a lot of treatments are a risk-benefit ratio that must be considered by the patient in consultation with their practitioner. Did you hear the flapping? That was pipey. Also, there's a lot of over-the-counter drugs that we don't even think twice about that have their toxicities. For example, NSAIDs can literally kill epithelial cells in the stomach. So until more human studies are done on silver, on its safety and efficacy, it's a big question mark for me personally. Would I ever take it? Yeah, maybe. Would it be the first thing I try? No. But I wouldn't blame anyone that uses it under the direction of their practitioner or in moderation. I would just say don't take the marketing strategies that are used by silver companies as the unfettered truth unless they provide you with compelling human studies, which I bet they don't have. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jake. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it wherever you can, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I really want to make helping people navigate their health journey with these edutainment videos my job, and there are a few ways that you can help me do that. You can find my Etsy link in the video description box below, and you can find my link to my apparel. 25% goes to Bartonella Research. And if you're in a position to do so and you appreciate my research and advocacy, you can support this channel via Venmo and PayPal, and you can find that info in the video description box as well. Bye, Bartonella buddies and fellow health-seeking humans. What about dogs? Well, those too. Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach.
Okay, let's try that again.
Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Yay, Pepto-Bismol.
Very bad.